I'd like to welcome you all back to the IE427 garage. We've got a new project here in the shop. This is going to be a short-term project. We're probably only going to have this this one for a few weeks, hopefully. A couple little incidental things on it, a couple of upgrades, and we'll take a look at it. Alright, welcome back everyone. I'm always telling you how each of these cars has a story. And, you know, some of the stories are very uplifting, some of them are very emotional. This is going to be one of those emotional stories. This car right here is now owned by someone that I've known for the past, what, 27 years? Close to 30 years. However, he's only recently taken possession of the car, or bought the car. The person who originally built the car has passed away. And so the car was subsequently sold by his widow to the person that I know. And he asked that we kind of go through the car, do a nut and bolt on the entire car, front to back, check out the brakes and some other things. Let's go over here and we'll take a look at the list that he gave me. We had the car up on the lift earlier today when the owner was here, and we discussed a few of the issues that he wants me to check out while we have the car here. And as we're going through nut and bolting the car and doing a corner weighting and a front end alignment and stuff like that, we're going to go ahead and check out everything. But these are just some of the things that he wanted us to address while we had the car here. The first was on the 3-link. The rear axle seems to be favoring one side of the car, and as we had the car up in the air, we noticed that the panhard bar is loose, meaning the stop nuts that secure the panhard bar in place were never tightened. And so since the car was close to completion when the previous owner passed away, it's hard to tell exactly where he left off on the build. You know, the car moves on its own, and, you know, the brakes work, kind of. And, you know, we just want to make sure that the car is safe and that, you know, everything works on the car and stuff like that. So with that, we're going to make sure that we get the axle all squared up in the back of the car, and so that it has equal profile on either side, passenger and drivers, as far as where it sits in the fender wells. So we're going to adjust that and get everything tightened up. He did ask me about the straps for the side pipes, because as you can see right here, the brackets are here, but the side pipes are not connected using the rear mounts. I've told you guys in videos before that I prefer not to use those. Reason being, a lot of times the stress that those are put in, even if you're only using the upper bolt hole on the top to give them some flexibility, eventually those straps that are welded to the side pipes, the welds break. And you can put a little plate, you know, a notch plate in there and weld it in and make them stronger. But the bottom line is they kind of put the whole engine and side pipes in a bind. And depending on how much flex there is in the motor mounts will determine how quickly those side pipe mounts break, or the muffler itself, the tab on the muffler part of the side pipes break. So since this car has a big block, it actually has a 427 motor in it, and it actually has 4-4 side headers going into the side pipes. The side pipes themselves are very rigid. They don't move. That's why I have them mounted on my own car. I've had, small children, 6 and 7-year-olds stand on the side pipes and they don't move. They don't break. So there's really not enough weight in the side pipes to cause any long-term damage to either the engine or the headers. So I choose not to run them. I did tell you on the Texas car, we were forced to run them because of that new ball and socket type adjustment that the 4-4 headers that Factory 5 is providing now. But they kind of force you to use a rear mount now. Now, there's enough flexibility in those because you can't get them that tight that I think they're going to be less prone to breaking those rear mounts. But in this case, we're just not going to put them on. And so I told the owner, hey, I don't run them in my car. My car's been like that for 12 years. I've never had a problem. So that's what we're going to do here. But he did ask the question. So good on him that he asked the question. He is having some issues with the throttle cable. He's not getting wide open throttle on the throttle. And I'll open the hood here in a few minutes and you guys can see the awesome intake that's on this thing. So we're going to take a look at that. And then he mentioned something about a bolt that is on the throttle pedal that is either contacting or near contacting the steering shaft. So we're going to take a look at that. The brakes on this thing suck. As he had it flatbedded here this morning, and I needed to move some vehicles around in the shop, and so he took the car around the block. As he was pulling the car in, he just mentioned to me that the brakes absolutely suck on this. Two things that I think we've got going here. They're manual brakes. And, when you go in between your daily driver that has power brakes and ABS and all that other stuff, and then you jump into a car like this that has manual brakes, there's quite an adjustment curve that goes along with those. So with that, I don't think in this case it's just a matter of pedal pressure. I actually think that the car, because it has very limited miles, I think there's less than 10 miles on this car. I think that it, one, has street pads, and two, that the pads were not properly bedded when the brakes were first used. And with those two things, I think what we have is the rotors are glazed, the pads are glazed, and the brake pads themselves are the wrong compound for initial bite. So we're going to look at pulling the rotors off, both front and rear of the car, and changing out the pads to a more aggressive pad, probably from Hawk or Porterfield or one of those. And I'm going to pull off the rotors. I'm going to take them in and I'm going to have them cleaned up. I'm just going to have the machinist take off as very little as he possibly can, just in order to give us a new surface. And then we will install new brake pads, and then we will make sure that we bed them properly. So whoever's pads we go in, if you go to their website, whether it's Willwood, whether it's Porterfield, whether it's Hawk, EBC, they all have a bedding procedure to make their brakes work to their potential. And if you don't do the bedding process properly, you'll get what we have here. Now, I'm going to check the pedal just to make sure that by some chance there's air in the lines and we don't have a proper bleeding done on the braking system. But I tend to think that it's more a problem with glazed discs on the rotors. So we'll see how that goes. I think the last thing on here on his list was the clutch. And it is, although he's got bleed on here with a question mark, this is not a hydraulic clutch. This is a cable actuated clutch with the Willwood pedal box, and it is using what I think is the Dorman clutch cable that Factory 5 provides. And the problem with that clutch cable and a lot of the other inexpensive replacement cables is that they just have too much friction inside the housing between the actual between the actual cable itself and the internals of the clutch cable housing. So what we're going to do is I always make sure I have a couple of the Ford Motorcraft replacement cables here in the shop. So I think I have 2 upstairs right now, and we'll replace that Dorman clutch cable with one of the Ford replacement clutch cables. And the advantage of the Ford cable is the inner liner on the clutch cable is Teflon, and so it just operates much more smoothly. So I think when we do that, we will make the clutch work just a ton better. The transmission in this is a Tremec. I believe it's a TKO 500 because it looks like it's just a little bit smaller than the TKO 600. So while we have the car here, we're going to go ahead, we're going to check out the wiring under the dash. There was some wiring underneath the car that we saw that we're going to add some cushion clips to, and some pop rivets rather than the self-drilling, self-tapping screws that are holding them in, or tie wraps that are holding them in now. And we're going to make sure that we get, everything strapped up out of the way so it's away from the drive shaft, stuff like that. But then we found some other issues that we're going to address while the car's here as well. Like I said, I think this car is only going to be here for a few weeks, and we're going to work on it between, dealing with Michael's car that's away right now at upholstery and paint, the 25th anniversary car, which we did move out of the way to get this one up on the rack today. But let me lower the lift down, and we'll take a look at some of the interior and other things that are going on inside this car. So I'm actually going to start here at the back of the car, because this is, and I didn't know this until he dropped the car off today. I was under the impression this was a Mark III because of the chassis number on it. But he did get a hold of Sally at Factory 5 and found out this is a Mark IV. It was produced in 2011, so that makes it a pretty early Mark IV. And what you're going to, any of you that know about the Mark IVs and some of the early production cars, up until actually recently when they announced the 25th anniversary cars, is that the space in between the license plate light and the handle does not allow you a whole lot of room for a license plate. And so this is one of the first thing I mentioned to him, is that this is going to have to be modified in order for a California plate to mount in here. So we're going to do a mod that's going to actually build on the existing bracket and bring it up higher. And then the license plate will tuck in to the actual light assembly to get the license plate up as high as it will go. And then we still may have to trim the license plate just a little bit when this thing gets a plate. The owner's in the process of hunting down paperwork right now from the previous owner so he can get it registered. The trunk does not have anything to hold it open. And the trunk was never finished. So 2 things there. This owner, if he decided that he wanted more trunk space, we could go ahead and with the finished car, we could still put a drop trunk box in here. It would we'd have to drop the tank, but we would be able to get it in here by dropping the tank and putting a drop trunk box in here, which would give him quite a bit more space in here. But the trunk doesn't have any struts or any means to keep it open. So I think what we're going to do in this case, because of 1, the battery being mounted inside the trunk, and 2, the fact that it's using the early real high arched hood hinges, is we're probably going to go with some Mark III trunk struts from replica parts, and those will actually attach to the trunk lid about here, and then there will be a bracket on the 3/4 inch tube that runs across the trunk just behind this portion of the hinge, and we'll put a set of those on so that he can actually have the trunk hold itself open when he opens the trunk up. The next thing we're going to do is address the parking brake. The parking brake, he's having some issues with that. It's not locking in place, and it's really not holding the car right now. And I think it's just a matter of some adjustment. So we'll take a look at that and see if we can get that to operate just a little bit better. We talked about sun visors, and I think that's something that he can do himself, and so I think he will. We talked about door panels, another thing that I think he'll do on his own. But since we're going to be in the foot box on the driver's side looking for a potential issue with the steering shaft, if you'll notice, the steering shaft right now is a good 4 inches back from where I would normally place this. And the owner's a pretty, he's a pretty tall guy. He's about my height, so he's got to be 6 foot or 6'1", something like that. And with this amount of space in here, that puts the steering wheel like in your chest. And so I think what we're going to do while we're in the foot box is we're going to loosen up the set screws on the pillow block, and we're going to run the shaft farther in so that the back of the steering wheel is just about kissing the dash. And I think that 4 inches of space in the cockpit will be welcomed by the new owner, because it'll just give him more room inside the car. Another thing that I discussed with the car owner is the ride height. We are going to be corner weighting the car, and we are going to not only center the rear end housing like I talked about before, we are going to do a front end alignment on this. So if you look in the back at this car, it is sitting way high in the back. And then on the front passenger side, it's not too bad. There's about 2 fingers width between the top of the tire and the fender, which is good. We'll check it as far as the frame rails off of the ground go. And usually we start at about 4 inches in the front and about 4.5 inches in the back. But you can see at the driver's side, I can't fit those 2 fingers in. I can get about 1.25 fingers in there. So that tells me that the coilovers aren't set the same from side to side, because there honestly isn't that much flex in the Factory 5 chassis that it could twist. And the driver's side rear is about the same height. Now here you can really see that if I hold my hand up right here and you look this way, you can see that the tire is about 3 inches from my fingers, with my fingers being held perpendicular to the ground right there. And on the other side, the wheel is just about at the edge of the finger. The edge of the tire is just about the edge of the fender. So that tells me that we're going to have to center that rear axle, and that it's not anywhere near where it should be. Not a big deal. Like I said, the panner bar has not been tightened down, so we'll be able to adjust that really easy, get it all centered up, and then once we get the tire pressure set, we can throw it up on the scales, and we can make sure that we're bearing down equally on all 4 corners, and it'll be good to go. All right, so first, any of you that have seen Jeff Miller's work before will know that this is indeed a Jeff Miller paint job. This car was painted by Jeff, I believe, about 5 years ago. And like I said, the car's never been registered because the previous owner had some health issues and then tragically passed away. So far from what we've seen, the previous owner of this car actually did a pretty good job building the car, and he took a lot of care in doing some of the things that he did. One, this is a big block car, and yes, those are Weber stacks. So when you look around, some of the stuff, it's got a surge tank. They actually did a pretty good job with the hose into the radiator. I think one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to make a block off plate for the F panel that still has the opening in it. The rear splash shields for the front fender wells, the elephant ears, are missing. Now I think that the new owner did tell me that he has them. He collected those parts up when he bought the car, and we're going to go ahead and install those for him when he drops them off here at the shop. Some of the wiring isn't, let's say, up to my standard or up to our standard. So stuff like this where there's tie wraps, zip ties holding the wiring in place, we're going to address that. We're going to, install some P-clips on there, some cushion clips, and we'll pop rivet that stuff. Same thing with other items that we found underneath the car. And I mentioned replacing the clutch cable, and the problem that we're going to have with that is that because this is an early Mark IV, there's no access panel here. Factory 5 didn't do that on the Mark IVs until about halfway through, or what would now be halfway through the Mark IV production run. And so, lucky for me, we have another Mark IV in the shop right now. The footbox configuration is a little bit different, but I do have this cover that came with the 25th anniversary car, Pauline. And so I'm going to use that cover as a template on top of here. We're going to cut the access panel on the top, and then we'll be able to get to the clutch cable from inside here. It already has an adjustable clutch quadrant, so we should be able to get the clutch adjusted exactly where the owner wants the clutch adjusted. But that's what we're going to do as far as the engine bay is. We're just going to kind of clean up wiring and address anything we can under the hood to make it look more presentable, and so hopefully long term the new owner's not going to have any issues with it. One thing we are looking for, and I may send a message to my buddy Al, who's a big block guy, is what to do with this bottom hose. So the bottom outlet hose that goes from the outlet of the radiator to the input of the car, we're using right now we're using that corrugated stainless steel hose, which I just think sucks. And so I'm going to see what we can do in order to get a replacement for that. Whether we fabricate something here in the shop with some 1.5-inch stainless tubing and bead roll the ends and, use some hoses or whatever. We're going to have to see how that goes. But the owner kind of pointed this out to me, and I told him we could see about addressing that. The radiator is mounted in the typical Factory 5 fashion, where, if you guys know, it's fixed mounted on the top with a couple of bolts through the frame. Not what I would consider ideal, but at this point, and I told this to the new owner, we're almost better off waiting until the radiator fails, if it fails, and then pulling out the radiator, because to pull it out now, just to put the piano hinge across the top and the lower mount from Mark Reynolds over at Breeze is a lot of labor, and with the body on it, it's kind of difficult. So we might just leave it the way it is for now and see how it goes, and if it fails in 10 years, then we'll address it then. I think for the most part that's going to do it for the walk around. I'm not going to get into any of the filming any of the work right now. I'm just trying to get a list together. We are going to change the brake pads. We are going to do some other stuff like the struts for the trunk and stuff. And so I want to sit down this afternoon. I want to start getting some parts numbers and some links ready to send over to the new owner so that he can get those parts ordered and we can get going on this. So I don't think I'm going to be filming any of that stuff, because watching me sit at the computer, tapping away isn't any fun for anyone to watch. So I think that's going to do it for this video. All right, everyone. I want to thank you all for watching. I probably should have had the camera going this morning, but I was slow getting up and getting ready this morning, and they arrived with the car as I was getting ready, and so The if you have never heard one of these cars with a big block, I mean, my car sounds cool. I love the way my car sounds when it's, you know, when it's idling. But there's just no comparison to one of these cars with a big block and side pipes. It's an unmistakable sound, and it was so cool. You know, we got it off the flatbed because the owner flatbedded the car over here today. And then I had to move some stuff around the shop. And so, you know, when we did that, he went ahead and he started the car. And the big block sound that these make is just, you can't match it. I don't care what you do to your small block. I don't care what you do to your Coyote or your mod motor. It will never sound like a big block Ford with side pipes. And it was just so cool. We don't get many big block cars through the shop. So very, very, very cool thing. And I'm glad that we're able to do this work for, like I said, someone that I've known for 25, almost 30 years. So I want to thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoy the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe. The channel is growing in leaps and bounds, and we really appreciate all the views. I'm going to say goodbye for now. I've got a bunch of parts to research for this. I hope you all have a great day.